How can you distinguish yourself as a manager? How will you advance your career? Get the job you want. AMA introduces a new standard for management excellence, the AMA Certified Professional in Management, or AMA CPM. How do you get certified? Applicants take a certification exam administered by a testing authority. The exam covers the most vital skills managers need to succeed. There are many ways to prepare for the exam, and AMA offers special tools to help you. After passing the exam, use your certification to demonstrate your competence as a well-rounded manager, establish your credibility with employers, and inspire your team to greater performance. Ready to get started? Then visit amanet.org/CPM to learn more. It's your career. Make it stand for excellence.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, good night, depending upon what part of the world you're in. Welcome to the CEO series. If it's Friday, it is the CEO series. Our guest today is Rich Fontaine, who is the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for the American Management Association, a global leader in professional development and training for close to 100 years, strong footprint. He oversees all multi-channel marketing initiatives for the AMA, which is the industry-leading instructor program, which provides individuals and organizations with the knowledge, skills, and tools needed to achieve high-performance excellence in a rapidly changing world. And he's also a good friend of mine. So, Rich, welcome to the CEO series. How are you, man?
Thank you, Ron. It's great to be here. Nice to see you, too.
Yeah, glad you're here. So being at the forefront, American Management Association, kind of setting the standard on leadership development. Let's talk post-COVID, or if there is a euphemism as post-COVID. What are some insights that you've seen from the AMA as it relates to the new view on leadership?
Yeah, I think what this period has taught a lot of leaders is the importance of having empathy, emotional intelligence, and being able to keep your teams engaged. It was such a challenge, particularly in the onset of the pandemic, when a lot of organizations were forced to go fully remote, that a lot of leaders didn't have the capabilities of creating truly engaging activities with their teams. I think a lot of them were just winging it, and they had to learn by trial and error. So, we saw a great need from our customers for, training to keep people engaged, to keep people fully aligned with the goals and objectives of the organizations, even though we weren't meeting together in person. And I think that will only continue as it seems to be the future of work, at least, office work is going to be a hybrid situation where those organizations that have recognized that there's a value to keeping people in a work-life balance, particularly those with long commutes. You know, when you get spoiled when your commute is literally the 2 minutes from your bedroom to your den or something, as opposed to, you know, my commute's about an hour and a half, but you know, yeah. So you know, I think it's encouraging too, that senior leaders have recognized that their own employees can also do a very good job of managing themselves as needed without direct observation and supervision. That I think we've learned to trust our teams to do their jobs and do them effectively, without, you know, the traditional model of, you know, everyone in the office and are you sitting at your desk and being productive. So
you know, even saying that, it kind of takes you way back. You're sitting in the office and everybody's coming in, and now it's a totally new dynamic, you know, in doing that. But my thought is, and I deal with leaders across the globe, the mindset of that leader who may be still stuck on, I need people in the office. Can you address that for a second, from the leader who has the mindset of still clinging on to what was and not looking at what is possible from the other side?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, I myself have had that challenge with direct supervisors in the past, where I expressed a desire to work from home 1 day a week just to literally break up the commute. And in one instance, my direct supervisor said, absolutely no way. If you're not sitting at your desk, you're not being productive. And then in another job, that supervisor was fully supportive of it. And you know, obviously with the tools available to us through technology solutions and innovations, we can be productive virtually anywhere as long as we've got a really good internet connection, you know. And I think, you know, leaders today have to recognize that people take personal responsibility for themselves and for their goals and objectives, and are capable of doing that in any manner of environment, as long as they have the tools available to them. So, you know, my boss here at AMA likes to talk about the old style of management was command and control. And that's out the door now. That if you lead that way, you basically will have a lot of attrition in your workforce. And you know, I've seen a great deal of people who take pride and self-motivation and trying to, you know, feel like they own their segment of the business, more so than I've ever seen before. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, having the right training and development initiatives to build self-confidence, and to build self-esteem. You know, I think that was lacking maybe 20, 30 years ago. You know, I've been in the business world 35 years now, and I think there's so much more at our disposal to build that self-esteem and self-confidence that is benefiting younger managers these days than I ever did.
Abid, I think Abid says it's a great topic, and Rod Miller says trust and enablement is key, and we need people thrive working remotely. So you talked about the manager that says absolutely not versus the manager that says cool. So how do you take that leader? And I know this is what your development programs are about. A leader in the fixed mindset of saying, I only trust people if I see them, to get to where a future state approach is that do whatever you're going to do as long as I need my deliverables by X, Y, Z.
It's, you know, I think that's where, we try and instill a sense of confidence in leaders to feel like they can trust their teams to effectively execute on the organization's goals and objectives, and to be able to talk about alignment, aligning the right resources with the right strategy of an organization. And those resources don't have to physically be in one place. They can be scattered around the globe. And what I think the biggest challenge is being able to quantify it effectively for leaders. Some of this is very qualitative, and if you can't generate a report that shows productivity measures amongst your remote teams versus your in-person teams, it's you might get a leader who is less enthusiastic about supporting that. So
making the business case is the why that's important. So from your side, what do you see as the most requested type of leadership development that leaders are looking for to bridge this gap, huge gap of a stationary versus a fluid kind of approach? What are your offerings that you're seeing as probably the most sought after development opportunity?
I think we get a lot of requests for resiliency and risk taking. I think inherently humans don't like to take a lot of risks. So, but organizations need a certain amount of risk because you're not going to innovate if you're not willing to take risks. As long as they're measured risks and there's backstops to help you prevent them from spiraling out of control. So we have a lot of our curriculum and our faculty focused on helping organizations build cultures of innovation, cultures of risk taking, resiliency, so that people don't feel like they have failed if something doesn't necessarily work. I mean, in the world of marketing, which I've been in for a while, we have so many more failures than we do have successes. But if you don't continue to try new tactics and strategies, you're gonna remain absolutely stable, and you're not going to grow, and you're not going to build market share. So
so I'm kind of big on metaphors. I was at the car wash yesterday, and as I'm driving in, the car's dirty from the snow and all these kinds of things, and I come out the other side, the car's clean, beautiful, sparkling, and I said, leaders coming through that so-called AMA kind of approach, understanding it's a new normal, and coming out on the other side, and I'm ready to handle this new kind of mindset in organizations. And I say that to come back to the question around trust. How would you guide leaders in that old school approach to going through a development process and coming out on the other side in building that trust amongst the team, from the organization building the trust amongst employees inside of the organization?
I think a key component of that is having leaders feel confident in the capabilities and the independence of their teams, and to make them, to empower them to feel like they are themselves, business owners, even though they may not literally have equity stakes, but to feel like they, all of us have responsibilities that we're conducting on a daily basis, where the end goal is that we serve the customers of our organization, and to feel like everyone has an ownership stake in serving those customers effectively and taking it somewhat personally. I think the empowerment aspect of that, to feel like this is my business, and I and I'm running it. And as you know, I'm trying to stay in my lane, and I'm bringing in assistance and resources from colleagues and teammates as needed. But otherwise, and I'll keep you apprised as a leader of, you know, the successes that we're achieving, the obstacles that are in our way, and ask for support and guidance along the way. And I think a leader, you know, the right leader will stay out of the way, support those individuals and motivate them. Mostly, you know, I think motivation is for most people a combination of you know, financial compensation, obviously, but also independence, and you know, having the bandwidth to be able to make decisions, and take some risks that they think are in the best interest of the business. I mean, no leader, you know, CEOs of you know, enormous organizations, they have no sense of what's happening, you know, on the day to day in the trenches, but they have empowered, you know, the leaders of those businesses to make the right decisions and succeed. So you know, a company like Apple, I just read this morning, you know, they posted $36 billion in profit in the last quarter. How they continue to grow globally is because, you know, I'm sure Tim Cook has enabled, you know, his and so that everyone feels that they're working collectively to a greater mission. And you know, no one feels, I would hope, you know, intimidation is not an effective leadership trait. And I think organizations have have long recognized that is, as a leadership style, is long past us. And it's not an effective means of getting productivity and getting effectiveness out of organizations.
And that's a challenge, you know, because when you look at organizations that have been around 50 years, 100 years, and they've been successful to a certain point, I think, and understand me when I say this, I think COVID, we had implications from that, but from an organizational perspective, it was time to shake things up. I read an article the other week that said the org chart was 90 some years ago. From 6-day work week to 5-day work week was 100 years ago. So this disruption, and if we think in terms of we design from disaster and everything you're talking about, new style leadership, the way that we began developing leaders, maybe we began developing leaders earlier as opposed to waiting until they reach a certain level. And this way we have a pool of people from an internal perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, you know, the pandemic accelerated a lot of necessary changes in organizational structures, and in leadership styles, and in having the right tools and resources at one's disposal to be more effective and productive. And you know, if there's anything positive that has come out of the pandemic, I think that was a big part of it. And
huge part of it. So talk to me about because I was doing some research, and we got a video coming up at break, and it talked about the Women Leadership Center. I think that's so cool because a lot of global perspectives are dealing with the women leadership, developing women leaders. So give us kind of an overview. But although for people that's listening in, we have a short video that we're going to show you about the Women Leadership Center. So give us kind of an oversight of that.
Yes. So about 5 years ago, AMA, you know, recognized from feedback from a lot of our customers was that there weren't a lot of training and development initiatives that were specifically focused on empowering women, and giving women the confidence building tools and capabilities they needed to be more effective leaders, especially because, you know, still to this day, you look at most organizations and they continue to be dominated by men in the senior executive ranks.
Mm-hmm.
So we created the Women's Leadership Center with the goal of being able to empower women to build confidence, to build self-esteem, to build decision-making capabilities, to build their communication skills, to build the leadership traits that they would need to be able to kind of break the glass ceilings in a lot of organizations that still exist. And it was probably the most successful new product launch that AMA has had in the last 20 years.
Wow.
Which said to us, there's obviously an enormous need in the marketplace for this. And when we have our WLC workshops, the interaction and the engagement of the women in those groups is just incredibly powerful. And it's a safe space for them because they are with a bunch of other women who are aspiring to advance their careers, and for a lot of them it might be the first time they've been in a forum with other leaders and managers who are women, and without feeling intimidated by some of the old school male dominated practices. So we're with our goal is that hopefully in 10 years AMA has helped kind of swing the pendulum so that there are more women in the C-suite, there are more women board directors, there are more women consultants, etc. And I think what's interesting is you look at the stats on higher education now, and that there's far more women than men who are pursuing both bachelor's and master's and advanced degrees. And I think that's great. The demographics are such that on its own, women are going to create better opportunities for themselves to be leaders. And as long as we as organizations empower them to do that and give them the resources and the support they need, I think we're going to be in good shape.
You mentioned safe space. I do leadership development from a global perspective, and sometimes I always make note of the audience that I'm dealing with, and if there's a single woman in there, I want to spend some time up front to making her comfortable, because it can be intimidating if you're one amongst 14 others, and trying to engage as much as possible. Because one of the things I found that whenever you do a breakout group, and I did this in maybe 4 years ago in Saudi Arabia for a company, and I had 4 or 5 women that was in the breakout group, their insights of the so-called future of work was totally different from a male perspective. And I think exactly what you said, the organizations need to listen more to this new dynamic that's coming in.
I think women just by nature are more empathetic individuals than men are. And I think that's going to benefit their opportunities to advance in the new dynamic of how organizations can be more effective in their goals. Because I've been fortunate to have a couple phenomenally strong female leaders as bosses, and just found that balance of empathy and support was so much more conducive to creating a culture of I don't want to call it comfort, but you felt like someone had your back. That's that's I always felt like someone had my back, and boy, that made a big difference in your own self motivation when you have that support. So
when we worked at Rich and I, to give some background, Rich and I worked at Martha Stewart in New York years ago. 72% of our workforce was female. 72%. And I came there from IBM totally different. So that was like a culture mindset shift for me to work in an organization that was basically all run by females. And it was a learning experience that I always reference to this day. So even as male leaders, there's a lot you can learn from that, being put in that kind of environment where all the women are leaders. And it was cool. It was cool.
It
And
was.
you were one of the first 50 in that company, right?
I was. I did 18 years there, if you can believe it.
I did
And
10, 9 or 10.
yeah, and I love. I'll say it was the best experience in my career. That was an organization that just had a culture of creativity flowing through it. And
Yes.
and I remember I used to walk out of my office and go down into the test kitchens or into the craft studio or into some of the other the workshops, and you just thrive off of the creativity that was
Yeah.
in that organization. As a business person, sometimes when you feel trapped by spreadsheets, you just needed to do that to remind yourself, what you are all working towards. And Martha herself, I will say, I probably had a little easier time with Martha, being on the business side, because
Yeah.
for the most part it was, profit and loss.
Yeah.
That's what we were looking at.
Yeah.
And if you were on the creative side, though, some of it was very subjective. So you
Yeah.
could have designed what you thought was the most phenomenally beautiful flower arrangement,
Yeah.
and you put hours into it. And if Martha didn't like it, Martha didn't like it. So, I feel that's part of the reason I was able to last as long as I did, is
Yeah.
as long as I delivered on the financial goals and objectives,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I will say this about Martha: she was very fair to me throughout my entire career. If we made a mistake or if we failed at something, she would call us out on it and expect it to be remedied, but always did it in a very fair and diplomatic way. So
Yeah.
I know, sometimes Martha personally gets a bad rap, and some other, female leaders get a bad rap, but I personally never experienced that. So.
Well, two things I want to tag on to. You mentioned the test kitchen. For people that are listening in, don't know what a test kitchen is. Imagine going in a huge kitchen and people are baking cookies all day, or they're cooking some type meat. So you'd go there and you can sample these different things. So I would use that as a strategic advantage whenever I had a particular potential client coming in, or a so-called customer that was going to be engaged with us through human resources. I'd always find the day that they were going to be cooking the cookies because of the smell, and take them down there and have a little package, wrap the Martha way to take it out as a take-home kind of approach. And it worked strategically each time to do that. The other piece I wanted to mention, Martha was in Dubai, I'm going to say maybe 2 months ago, and she and I had dinner together, and we talked the same things about the company and what it was about. And it was a great evening. Kevin was there, Hannah was there. The three or four of us just kind of had a reminiscing kind of what it was like doing the old times and doing that. So everything you said kind of tied into that. It was the best company ever that I've ever worked for, but I decided to move on later in life.
Yeah. And I think, some of the things we're talking about right now in terms of like empowering people to take risks and to be innovative, that existed at Martha Stewart, and it was part of the foundation of that organization. It was kind of groundbreaking at the time, if you think about it. And yeah.
So I wanted to kind of switch the conversation somewhat. So DEI is big today, specifically in the U.S. And that was precipitated by some things that happened. We won't go into that. So give us a little bit of background on that. Talked about the dashboard of every organization. How is AMA, American Management Association, guiding this discussion, development of leaders that need to understand a DEI approach, kind of a DEI kind of approach?
Yep. Yeah. So it's and there's so much. Every day it seems like the world of DEI is continually evolving. And you hear now a lot of people refer to as DEIB, with B being belonging, and you hear references to allyship a lot too. Allyship really meaning having the support of your colleagues and your team members, or having a good mentorship program. I think what we do as a training organization is validate the hypothesis that a diverse culture is far more beneficial to an organization in terms of finding solutions to challenges and to creating innovations and opportunities that might not otherwise exist when too many of your leaders or individual contributors are from the same demographic group. The diversity of ideas and motivations, I think, help organizations thrive more productively. And as globalization is become far more prominent in any organization, the ability to position a company to be much broader in what its target audience is only going to happen if you've got the right teams of individuals within your organization who can understand those audiences. Mm-hmm. So, you, Ron, being in the Middle East, I'm sure, how you approach audiences in the Middle East, or in Asia, in Africa, far different than you would in the U.S. And if you don't have any members in your organization that have the understanding and the insights to those cultures, you're at a huge disadvantage.
So my transition was from New York City. I was working for Xerox in one of the consulting practices, and I left there and I moved to Saudi Arabia. It was 180 degrees. And there was a lot of learning that I had to instill in myself in trying to understand organizational issues, diagnosing, but not from, and I had to move away from that New York mindset. You know what I mean? That New York mindset that, we can do it just like this, and listen more. I realized I had to listen more and just listen and take in what everyone else is saying. So I say that to say, from a marketing approach, there was a mall near me, and the mall was opening up, and there were marketing signs, and there was a sign for a pharmacy that was opening up, and they showed a family strolling along the beach and all of this kind of thing. But the family that they used in that photo had nothing to do with the way people looked in the Middle East. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, I said, you did not have a Middle Eastern person on that team that designed this concept, because you would have never used that, because it doesn't equate to here. So when we talk about learning from different situations as it relates to DEI, it's a business case. It's not just a feel-good kind of approach.
No, it's absolutely a business case, and I think that's been probably the most dramatic shift in the acceptance of DEI initiatives, is that it makes sense from a business perspective, that you're not going to be able to grow and expand your audience for your products and services if you don't understand how to connect with your audiences effectively.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you know what? Let's take a break now, and we're going to show the video on the Women's Leadership Center, and then we'll come back. Okay, great.
Okay. Thanks, Ron.
Help kind of negate some of the stereotypes that happen with the perception of women in leadership roles.
My favorite thing about today was talking about executive presence. That's something that I'm very passionate about.
I am going to take back the passion and the zeal that we learned about empowering women with the tools and resources we learned today.
My favorite thing about today is getting some really practical advice that I can go back and actually apply in my job.
It was just making sure that women in power understand how much power they actually have. Understanding our voice, understanding our power, understanding how to get our points across to the powers that be so that we can be at the table and become equals.
We love WLT!
Absolutely perfect. Award-winning. Business case.
Thank you.
Business case.
Yeah.
And, you know, I
You know
always...
what?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was thinking about something while that video was playing, and one of the most gratifying things as a manager and a leader is to see individuals who are part of your team advance in their careers. You know, so you know, obviously, during my long tenure at Martha Stewart, I had a lot of young managers on my team, and I've stayed connected to them primarily through LinkedIn, and I can see now, you know, when they were assistant marketing managers or marketing managers on my team, and many of them now are vice presidents and senior vice presidents, and you know, they were almost all women. It was just, you know, the kind of the nature of the organization. And I got to tell you, that is so gratifying to me to know that, you know, I think I had at least some part of helping them grow and nurture their skills and capabilities and advance their careers. And it's really, yeah. It's like being a proud dad sometimes, but
yeah,
you know.
I know. I had lunch with Colleen, who worked on your team, maybe 2 weeks ago, and she talked about you and the learnings from that, and now she's working and she's doing great things and on her side. So exactly what you're talking about, and she worked for you in her, I think, first maybe formative role in marketing. Yeah.
So anyway, it's and you know, and I think that, you know, that is, there's part of that you know, that can't be learned, that it's almost, you know, human nature that you want to see other people succeed, you know. And I, you know, I never felt threatened by anyone on my team that they were trying to, you know, circumvent my you know, my decision making or my authority in that role. And I think, you know, that's where a lot of leaders get caught up in feeling like, whether it's their own lack of confidence or their own insecurities, and where they lose that connection with their own teams.
So you mentioned leaders' insecurity. You know, when you look at disruptions inside of organizations, the Great Resignation, I think a lot of that comes from insecurities of leaders. You know, whether they feel threatened or whether they're just burned out, or whether in a lot of cases they should never have been in that role in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, so how do we solution that inside of an organization? Putting the right,
you know, I think,
in other words, putting the right people in charge of a major strategic initiative. Is that the right person? Not so much from technical skills, but do you have the soft skills to massage and drive it forward?
Yeah, you know, so that kind of leads into one of the other things I did want to talk about, which is a major initiative of AMA, is we we heard from clients for many years about the lack of training and development of people in management positions, because most of the time people get promoted into a management position because they were a very effective individual contributor, but they never had the right training to be a manager, to all of a sudden motivate and get their teams to be effective. So we worked years to develop this new credential, what we call the Certified Professional in Management, similar to what SHRM does in human resources, or what PMP does in project management. And this is really something to help organizations make sure that the people that they're promoting into line management roles have the tools and capabilities to be effective leaders of other people. Because it's I think the research that we did said something like 67% of people who get promoted into a management role where they're now supervising other people have never had any formal training to do that.
Wow.
So there's a huge need in the business world to do that, because and that's where I think a lot of managers fail to be effective managers. Is they might have the core competencies that they developed as an individual contributor, were thrust into a leadership role, but never had the development and training to be effective in that role. So we're hoping that it's new. This certification is only 2 years old. It's momentum. It's getting buy-in from organizations now, and I think in 5 to 10 years, hopefully, it will be as recognized as a SHRM credential is, or a PMP credential, in having your leadership teams be well trained in for their future.
That's a hell of an insight. 67%. So I use that kind of a metaphor. So here's my the way that I talk to leaders about developing earlier. I'm an individual contributor. I leave on a Friday. I'm coming back on a Monday, and now I'm managing a team of 7 people that's doing the same thing. My skill set from individual contributor, that's totally different from me managing 7 people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
67%. So I also read a stat that Korn Ferry says 70% of the effectiveness of a team depends upon me and the climate that I build to grow people on my team, or develop people on my team. So those 2 stats alone tells you that we have to rethink the entire perspective as it relates to leadership development.
Yeah, and a lot of small to mid-sized organizations who, let's face it, they actually make up the majority of employers in this country, don't have formal, training and development initiatives within them. Sometimes it's a periphery responsibility of the HR person, and so that's where an organization like AMA can be hugely beneficial, because we have the offerings to be able to support those leadership and development initiatives without corporations having to create their own, and we're bringing decades of best practices and best practices that have evolved because we continue to do innovative research and thought leadership around the areas of leadership development. So,
okay, cool. So as we begin to close out, give us some insight, because this is a global audience that's tuning in today. Robbie says it's a great session. Thank you for the comment. The global reach of AMA. Give us an overview as to how this is spread out, because I want people to understand American Management Association is headquartered in New York City, but there's a global component. So walk us through that.
Sure. We're the AMA here in New York City is my primary focus is the U.S. market, but then we have in Canada the Canadian Management Center, which is an affiliate of AMA. In Europe, we have Management Center Europe, another affiliate based in Brussels. In Mexico City, we have AMA Latin America, which covers that territory, and then we have partnerships with organizations in Japan and China, and soon to be India, that leverage the AMA portfolio of assets to provide training and development in those areas also. So, our positioning is that, we've taken decades of research and knowledge and innovation into the world of human capital development, and we think that those best practices can be leveraged on a global basis. And so, I will admit we're fairly early in some of our initiatives in Asia, particularly in China, and we're anxious to see how well those evolve in the coming years ahead. But I think, again, globalization is here. We need to be, to recognize that that our audience is not just what's here in the 50 states anymore. And we do come with a very powerful brand in our 98-year history that differentiates us, and hopefully gives decision makers the confidence that they're aligning their organizations with best-in-class resources.
Okay, but before we close out, I want to go back to the Women Leadership Center. If a young lady is based in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Middle East, where I'm based out of, how could they become a part of this Women Leadership Center? Is it a virtual? Is it a hybrid model, or?
Yes, it is a hybrid model. So we any of our training seminars are available virtually, and because we have operations in Europe, so the time zone, they could actually participate in an online seminar, which is truly interactive, practitioner led, with breakout rooms. It's state-of-the-art technology to make it the most effective. And because we have instructors based in Europe, the time zones are such that someone in the Middle East could participate without having to do it at odd hours from the U.S. focus. So
So last question, what's next for AMA? I mean, we've got the Women Leadership Center, the Insight on Leadership Development. What are some new things that you're working on that's probably going to be bubbling up over the next year or so? Anything?
I think we hear a lot from our customers, and it's becoming far more prominent in the investment world about ESG, environment, society, and governance. And so we're trying to create some offerings that help organizations align with the importance of that. The other thing that I think, we're trying to figure out how much further technology can help us serve our audiences more effectively. So, I think, as you and I are doing right here, the ability to do Zoom and Teams has certainly benefited all organizations in the pandemic. But the hype about the metaverse, that if we truly could create a training room where it was multidimensional and it was truly interactive in the same capacity as a live in-person session, I think that could be really, really innovative. So we're in the preliminary phases of trying to find a partner that we could possibly work with to develop training solutions that would leverage that. So ask me again in a year, and I'll tell you how much progress we've made.
Okay, cool. So the kind of throwing a personal side of the metaverse piece that I'm helping to co-produce an event in Dubai, May 11th and 12th, on the Future Innovation Summit. And three themes we're looking at is space, sustainability, and metaverse. And we got key people coming in from across the globe that are very influential in all of these spaces. And I had a conversation with someone from PwC yesterday who just did a piece on metaverse and what that's about and how that's going to open up a new era of all of the things that we're talking about, and even the way that we do business. And I think it's probably the most exciting time being in business today, post-COVID. And post-COVID is COVID has kind of opened up, and we saw where the cracks were. We can't heal in the same way that we did before. We got to think in a new realm. So that's a good way to, end it.
Yeah, and hopefully, organizations that are leaders in the world of the metaverse do so responsibly. I think that the challenge of social media as a whole is that it's become so divisive, and I hope that the metaverse is steered in the right direction so that it becomes something that is for the benefit of society as opposed to the detriment. So.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. So we'll get that another time. Rich, thank you so much. I need you to hold on as we close out. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in from across the globe, and we'll see you next Friday.